The sky burned red. Stars fell like sparks from a dying fire, and the once bright galaxy trembled under the roar of warships. Entire empires fell in hours. Planets that had thrived for thousands of years were reduced to ash and silence. On one small green world, the last of its people ran through crumbling cities, smoke curling around broken towers. Screams and alarms filled the air, but amidst the chaos, a strange sight appeared. A dragon, massive and golden, wings spread wide, landing in the middle of the streets. Its scales reflected the fire around it, glowing like molten metal, and its eyes were sharp, alive, scanning the destruction. The dragon moved with purpose. It was not there to fight or conquer. It was there for something small, almost invisible against the ruins. The dragon's claws brushed aside fallen debris, and beneath a collapsed wall, it found the child. The baby was covered in dust, crying weakly, tiny arms reaching out. The dragon's heart, if dragons had hearts like humans, ached. It had seen countless wars, countless deaths, but this small creature stirred a strange, fierce protection. The streets shook with the footsteps of soldiers. They were not human, they were machines, flying armors, and alien creatures sent to finish what fire had begun. They moved fast, leaving a trail of destruction, seeking survivors. The dragon growled low, a sound that shook buildings and wrapped its enormous wings around the baby. Smoke and heat pressed in from all sides, but the dragon would not leave. Not now. Not ever. The dragon lifted off the ground, powerful wings cutting through the burning sky. The city fell behind them, fire swallowing everything, but the baby was safe. The dragon soared into the upper atmosphere, where the stars were still burning, and for a moment, silence fell. The galaxy's cries could not reach them here. The dragon held the child close, feeling the warmth of life against scales cold from battles. It was not just survival that drove the dragon. It was something deeper, something humans called hope. The dragon had watched humans for centuries, how they built, how they destroyed, how they fought when they had no chance. They were fragile, weak, and yet so stubborn. This little human, too small to even understand the world, carried that stubbornness within. The dragon knew it had to protect it even if the galaxy hated him for it. Days passed in the sky. The dragon avoided warships and patrols, hiding in asteroid fields and dead worlds. The baby slept most of the time, lulled by the slow beating of the dragon's wings. At night, under distant suns, the dragon looked at the child's face and wondered if it could survive. Humans were fragile, but they had a strange strength. Even in the ruins of this planet, even in the shadow of galaxies burning, humans refused to disappear quietly. The dragon's thoughts drifted to its own kind. Dragons were proud, fierce, and many believed that humans were unworthy of protection. "Why do you care?" other dragons had said in memory, voices like distant thunder. "Humans are weak. They cannot survive what we endure. Let them die and the galaxy will forget them." But the dragon could not forget. It had seen the child's small hand reach for it. In that moment, the dragon decided that some lives were worth defying fate, worth defying the galaxy. They traveled through empty systems, through planets that had fallen silent. The dragon taught the child to survive in simple ways: how to hide, how to move quietly, how to trust only what was safe. The child, even at this young age, seemed to understand the bond. A soft coo, a tiny smile, a grasp of the dragon's claw, all these made the dragon's resolve stronger. It was not just about protecting a life. It was about carrying hope forward. One day, as they passed a shattered moon, alarms from distant warships reached them. The dragon's wings beat faster, powerful enough to stir the dust of dead worlds. It knew that the galaxy would not let a human survive easily. But for the first time in centuries, the dragon did not feel fear for itself. Fear now belonged to the enemies who had forgotten that life could persist even when empires fell. The dragon's wings were shields, its body a fortress, and it would fight, hide, and endure for as long as needed. The child began to babble in a strange, joyful way, reaching toward the stars. The dragon looked down, scales shimmering in soft light, and felt a promise. One day this human might grow into something the galaxy could not ignore. But for now it was just a small life, fragile and precious, and it would be protected no matter what. As the last fires of the destroyed planet faded behind them, the dragon whispered in a voice that sounded like wind over stone, a promise to no one but itself: "You will live. I will protect you. Let the galaxies burn. Let the empires fall. Nothing will touch you while I breathe." The stars stretched endlessly before them. Silence fell, broken only by the soft heartbeat of the baby and the dragon's steady wing beats. In the middle of a dying galaxy, hope flew under golden wings. And though empires had been lost and galaxies turned to ash, the dragon held a spark that could not be destroyed, a tiny human safe in the sky. They disappeared into the darkness between stars, a lone dragon and a single human baby, hunted by none and protected by all the strength one creature could give. The galaxy would not forget the roar of wings over fire, the golden figure carrying life itself, and somewhere in the vast emptiness, a new story began, quiet, fragile, and unstoppable. The galaxy was quiet, but the silence was not peace. The dragon flew through the empty space between shattered stars, carrying the small human child nestled safely under golden wings. The child, now older by a few years, had begun to walk, tiny feet brushing against the dragon's scales as it moved. It laughed sometimes, a bright, soft sound that seemed impossible in a universe filled with ash and ruin. The dragon looked down at the child and felt something strange, something heavy and warm that it had never felt before. It was a feeling humans called love or care or something like hope. They had no home. Every planet they tried to visit was either destroyed or controlled by enemies who would not hesitate to kill them. The dragon hid in asteroid fields, weaving through floating rocks and debris. Its massive wings could fold around the child, creating a shield no weapon could penetrate. When enemy ships passed, the dragon stayed still, its body blending with the shadowed rocks, waiting until danger moved on. The child never cried during these moments. Somehow, it understood the danger and it trusted the dragon completely. The dragon taught the child simple things: how to survive in hiding, how to move quietly, how to eat the strange fruits of empty planets. It taught the child words, and slowly the human began to speak. At first, the words were simple: dragon, fly, safe. But soon the child began to ask questions. Why do they burn the stars? It asked once, looking at a distant fire in the void. Why do they chase us? The dragon did not answer at first. It had watched wars for centuries. It had seen how empires rose and fell. It had learned that the galaxy often made no sense and some questions had no answers. But the dragon could not leave the child alone with fear. They fear us, the dragon said finally, voice low and rough like rocks scraping together. They fear you because they do not understand life as we do. They fear what cannot be broken. The child thought about this, tilting its head, eyes wide. But I am small, it said. I am weak. The dragon looked down at the tiny figure and felt a deep pride. No, it said. You are small, yes. But strength is not only in size or power. Strength is in surviving, in moving forward, in living when all else is lost. That is what makes you strong. Years passed in this way. The human grew taller, stronger, though still small compared to the dragon. They flew together across systems destroyed by war, visiting silent planets where only shadows remained. The dragon watched carefully, always alert. It saw signs of life in the child that humans had once shown on their homeworlds: curiosity, courage, and the stubborn refusal to give up. These were qualities the dragon had never seen in any creature with scales or claws. And slowly, the dragon realized that the child was more than just a life to protect. The child was a spark, a tiny flame that could change the galaxy in ways the dragon could not yet imagine. Other dragons noticed. Some watched from far away, whispering to one another in voices that rumbled through space. Why protect a human? They asked. They are weak. They cannot survive without us. Let them fall, and the galaxy will be stronger for it. But the dragon did not care. It spread its wings wider, carried the child higher, and ignored the warnings. It had seen what humans could endure. It had seen that even when the world burned, they refused to disappear quietly. And so, the dragon refused to let go. No law, no rule, no threat would convince it to abandon the small life it carried. One day, as they rested on a rocky, abandoned moon, the child touched the dragon's face. Do you ever get lonely? The child asked softly. The dragon thought about the centuries of solitude, the battles fought and won, the skies traveled alone. And it realized that yes, it had been lonely. But now it was not. The child had filled the emptiness with laughter, with small hands, with questions and ideas and stories that made the dragon's old heart beat differently. No, the dragon said. I'm not lonely. You have made sure of that. The child smiled and leaned against the dragon's warm scales, and for a moment, the universe felt less cold. But danger was never far away. Scouts from the old empires began to track the dragon. They knew a human had survived, and that fact alone caused fear. Rumors spread through the broken galaxy. A dragon carries a human, and life still walks in places thought dead. Some empires sought to destroy them, others to capture the child, thinking it might hold secrets or power. The dragon watched every shadow, every approaching ship, and learned the patterns of hunters. It learned to move faster, hide smarter, and think ahead, all to protect the child. And the child learned too, mimicking the dragon, moving quietly, listening carefully, and trusting instincts more than words. One night, under a shattered blue sun, the dragon and child sat together on a ridge of black rock. The child asked, "Will they always chase us?" The dragon did not answer at first. It did not want to lie, but it did not want to scare the child either. Finally it said, "Perhaps. But as long as I am here, nothing will touch you. The galaxy may be full of fear, but you will not feel it while I am with you." The child's eyes sparkled with trust, and the dragon felt a heavy weight lift from its old, tired wings. And so, they continued moving across the galaxy. The dragon carried the child through fire and shadow, teaching it survival, teaching it strength, and showing it the value of life when the universe had decided that life should end. The dragon refused to let go, not because it owed anything to the galaxy, but because it owed everything to this small human who had survived, against all odds, with only faith in the golden wings above. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and though empires were burning and worlds were falling, hope traveled with them. In the shadow of destruction, the dragon and the human child became a quiet legend. One dragon refusing to let go. One child, small but unbroken. Together they moved through the darkness, carrying the promise that life could survive even in a galaxy that had forgotten mercy. No matter what came, the dragon knew one truth above all: the child would live and it would grow. And when it did, the galaxy would remember that a life protected under golden wings could never be erased. The galaxy was changing. The human child, once tiny and fragile, had grown taller, stronger, and sharper in mind. Though still small compared to dragons or towering war machines, the child moved with confidence, curiosity sparkling in wide eyes. The dragon watched every movement, every gesture, proud and protective. It had spent years teaching the human how to survive in a galaxy that wanted them dead, how to hide, how to think quickly, and how to trust only those who proved they were safe. Rumors had spread quietly, carried on whispers between the last survivors of broken empires. "A human lives," they said, "protected by a dragon." It is impossible yet true. Many who heard these words were afraid. Humans were supposed to be extinct, wiped out in the wars that had burned planets and swallowed stars. But the child's survival proved that humans could endure even the deadliest of galaxies. Fear took root in the hearts of those who had once claimed victory. If a human could survive, then perhaps the galaxy had been wrong to destroy them. The dragon sensed this fear in the cosmos, even in the silent drift of empty worlds. Scouts and patrols moved differently now, more cautiously. Fleets that once hunted without mercy slowed their pace, fearing the unknown. The child's very existence became a weapon, not in the hands of the human, but in the minds of the enemies who had forgotten that life could resist. The dragon's wings carried the child through systems filled with ghosts of empires, and the galaxy began to whisper of a strange, unstoppable bond between scales and flesh. The human learned quickly. Words became sentences, sentences became ideas. The child asked questions that made the dragon pause. "Why do they fight?" the human asked one day, looking at the red glow of a planet still burning in orbit. "Why do they not stop?" The dragon looked at the small human, whose eyes reflected the distant fires, and answered honestly, "Because they are afraid of life itself. They destroy what they do not understand. They chase shadows instead of seeing light." The child nodded, small hands gripping the dragon's scales, understanding more than words could express. As the child grew, the dragon noticed something else: empathy. The human cared for small creatures, even those that were weak or broken. It spoke softly to birds and animals it found on forgotten worlds, and even to creatures the dragon did not trust. This compassion puzzled the dragon. Dragons were not known for gentleness. They were hunters, fighters, survivors. But the human showed that strength could exist in kindness, that courage could coexist with care. It was a lesson even the oldest dragons had forgotten. Enemies began to appear more frequently. One day, a patrol from a fractured empire approached a ruined planet where the dragon and child had landed. The fleet was small, but armed with weapons that could tear through even dragon scales. The dragon spread its wings, shielding the child completely, and waited. The human, seeing the fleet, did not cry. Instead, it stepped closer to the dragon, holding out a small hand. "We can try to talk," it said. The dragon blinked. Talk. Humans rarely thought of speaking to their hunters. Most would fight or hide. But this child was different. The fleet hesitated. It had never encountered a human so calm, so brave, standing next to a dragon who could destroy them with one swipe of its tail. Some among the attackers began to doubt their mission. Could they really kill a life that survived so much, that seemed to carry hope itself? Others felt fear, raw and sharp, for they sensed that this human might change the very balance of power in the galaxy. Without a word, the fleet retreated, leaving the dragon and the child alone. The dragon's eyes glowed softly as it looked down at the human. It realized that even the smallest lives could hold power beyond scales or weapons. The child continued to grow, learning quickly from the dragon's wisdom. It learned which planets were safe, how to navigate asteroid belts, and how to read the patterns of stars to find shelter. It practiced speaking to survivors of fallen worlds, helping those who had no hope. Each small act, each moment of kindness spread stories across the galaxy. The human lives, they whispered, protected by a dragon. The galaxy is not done with life yet. And with each whisper, fear grew among the remnants of old empires. Dragons who had once ruled the skies in pride began to notice. Some were curious, others suspicious. Why does one of our kind protect a human? They asked in low roars that echoed across space. It is dangerous. It is foolish. But the dragon ignored them. Protection was not weakness. Compassion was not foolish. The child had survived against impossible odds, and nothing in the galaxy could change that. Other dragons could see the truth too if they dared to look. Survival was not only about strength or conquest. It was about courage, loyalty, and sometimes even love. One quiet night, resting on the edge of a shattered moon, the child asked the dragon, "Why do they fear me?" The dragon's golden eyes shone in the starlight. "Because you are a reminder," it said slowly. "A reminder that life can endure, that hope can exist when it seems impossible. They have destroyed so much and yet here you are. You are stronger than they are, not in power but in spirit. That is what frightens them most." The human nodded, understanding the weight of the words without fully realizing their meaning. As the dragon lifted off again, carrying the child across burned skies and empty systems, it knew that their journey would grow more dangerous. Empires would send hunters, scouts, and warships. Yet the dragon did not fear. The child had grown in skill and spirit. Together they were no longer just survivors. They were a force the galaxy could not ignore. Fear followed them like a shadow, but it could not reach the golden wings that protected the human life within. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and the child looked up, tiny hand brushing against the dragon's warm scales. "I want to help them," the human said softly. The dragon looked down, pride swelling in its chest. "One day you will," it said. "One day the galaxy will remember what life can endure. And until that day comes, I will not let go. I will carry you through fire, through shadow, through fear itself." And so they continued, traveling through empty skies, through worlds thought lost, through whispers of fear that rippled across the galaxy. One dragon carrying hope in golden wings. One human, small but unbroken, feared by empires yet unstoppable. Together they moved forward, leaving trails of courage, survival, and the quiet reminder that even when galaxies burned, life and hope could still survive. The stars were bright, but the galaxy was restless. Word of the human survival had spread, carried by whispers among the shattered remnants of empires. Some feared the child. Others watched with curiosity. None had yet dared to face the dragon that carried it. But now, the quiet of the void was broken by a fleet, vast and black, moving with deadly precision. They had come to take the human and destroy the dragon. The dragon saw them first, soaring above a shattered planet, wings stretched wide against the light of distant suns. It lowered itself in a defensive stance, golden scales glinting like armor. The human, now older and stronger, held onto the dragon's back, eyes wide but steady. Fear was there, yes, but it was not weakness. The child had grown in courage and an understanding of the galaxy, learning to read danger as the dragon had taught. The fleet opened fire. Bright beams cut across the sky, striking rocks and empty space. The dragon's wings moved with incredible speed, shielding the human from every shot. It soared higher, twisting and turning through asteroid fields, its claws smashing the few ships that dared to come close. The human leaned forward, small hands touching the dragon's neck, feeling the vibrations of power and strength. Together they were a storm, fast and unstoppable, but the fleet was many, and the dragon knew they could not outrun them forever. "Why do they want us?" the human asked, voice soft over the roar of wind and engines. "They fear you," the dragon said. "They fear what you represent. They fear hope. They fear that life can survive when they have destroyed so much. And they fear that I chose you over their laws, over the rules of dragons. That is why they hunt us." The human thought about this, eyes narrowing. "Then we have to show them something," it said. We don't have to hide anymore. We can show them life can be strong without hurting others. The dragon blinked, surprised. The idea was dangerous, perhaps foolish. But it was also brave. And it was exactly what the child had become, brave in the face of impossible odds. The dragon changed course, heading straight toward the fleet. The ships fired, but the dragon's wings created shadows that absorbed the blasts. The child raised its small hands, shouting words learned from other survivors, words of peace and promise. It did not attack. It only spoke, showing kindness and courage at the same time. Something strange happened. The enemy ships hesitated. They had expected fear, screams, and chaos. Instead, they saw a small human standing beside a dragon, unafraid, calling out words that echoed through the void. Some of the fleet's leaders whispered to one another. Could a human, small and fragile, really survive with a dragon this powerful? Could they really face life without hatred or cruelty? Doubt spread through the fleet like a silent fire. Other dragons watched from afar, curious and cautious. They had always believed humans were weak, and that dragons existed only to dominate. But here, one dragon had chosen protection over pride. One dragon had carried a human through fire, shadow, and fear. That act alone challenged everything they had known. Some dragons began to question their own ways. Could strength exist in care? Could courage exist in compassion? The golden dragon answered with wings, body, and resolve. The child answered with voice and spirit. The fleet, still uncertain, finally withdrew, though many kept watch from far away. The dragon did not celebrate. It remained alert, carrying the human higher, into the safe emptiness of space. The child sat quietly, thinking about what had just happened. We didn't fight them, it said. We showed them hope. The dragon's chest rumbled softly, a sound like wind over stone. Yes, it said. We showed them that life does not always have to destroy life. Strength does not always mean power. You have begun to teach the galaxy something it forgot long ago. 4 days they traveled, moving through silent systems and hiding in asteroid fields. The child learned more, asking questions, practicing small acts of courage, and helping others they met along the way. The dragon watched closely, always alert, always protective. It realized that the human was no longer just a life to protect. The child was becoming a teacher, a symbol. Even small words, small deeds, spread hope across the ruins of the galaxy. One night, resting on the edge of a dark planet, the human spoke softly, "Do you think they will ever understand?" The dragon looked at the small figure, its eyes reflecting starlight and fire alike. "Some will," it said slowly. "Some will see. Others may never change. But what matters is that we keep moving forward. We keep living. We keep showing them that life can endure, even when all else has fallen." The child nodded, gripping the dragon's scales, ready to continue the journey. As they lifted into the stars again, the galaxy stretched endlessly before them. They were alone yet not lonely. They were hunted yet protected. They were fragile yet unstoppable. The dragon's wings beat steadily, carrying the child through fire and shadow, across systems destroyed and forgotten. Every movement, every act, became a quiet defiance against the galaxy's fear and hatred. In that silence, in the vast emptiness between stars, they became more than dragon and human. They became a symbol. One dragon refusing to abandon life. One human, small but unbroken, teaching the galaxy courage, compassion, and hope. And though empires still plotted and fleets still searched, neither could erase what had begun. Life could endure. Life could survive. And hope, carried on golden wings, would not be defeated. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, bright and eternal. The dragon and the human soared forward, leaving behind shadows of fear and showing the galaxy that even in its darkest moments, life could shine. And somewhere in the vastness, a promise whispered between wings and voice. The galaxy had not yet seen the full power of courage, compassion, and survival. And they would be the ones to show it. The galaxy was quiet but not empty. Fires from old wars still glowed in the distance, and broken planets drifted through space like forgotten memories. Yet in the midst of the ruin, one small human had grown into a young person, strong and wise, walking beside a golden dragon who had protected them since infancy. They had survived when empires thought all humans were gone. They had endured when galaxies burned. And now, the story of their survival was about to change everything. The dragon carried the human across the stars, moving through empty systems and shattered worlds. Wherever they went, beings of many kinds watched. Some were curious, some afraid, but all knew that life itself had returned to the galaxy in a small, defiant form. The human had learned much from the dragon, how to read the stars, how to navigate danger, how to survive against impossible odds. But the human had also learned something more important: how to inspire. The child's courage, kindness, and determination left an impression wherever they went. They arrived at a planet that had survived the wars, a place where life was fragile but still growing. Humans had not settled there, and most beings had long forgotten the small planet's green valleys and bright waters. The human looked at it with awe. "We could stay here," they said softly. "We could help it grow again." The dragon tilted its massive head, scales shimmering in the starlight. "We could," it said. "And perhaps it is time. Time to give life a chance to bloom, not just survive." The human began to build. Not cities of steel or machines of war, but homes for the creatures of the world, gardens, clean water, and safe places to live. The dragon helped, moving heavy rocks and clearing debris, its wings strong and steady. Slowly, life returned to the planet. Animals emerged from hiding, plants sprouted in the soil, and the sky, once full of smoke and fire, cleared to a bright blue. The child had become a teacher, a leader, and the dragon watched with pride as hope grew from the ashes of destruction. Meanwhile, other dragons and beings of the galaxy began to notice. Some approached cautiously, drawn by the story of a human protected by a dragon. They came not with weapons but with questions, curiosity, and a desire to learn. They saw what the human had built, and they began to understand that strength was not only in battle, but in protection, creation, and care. The dragon, once alone in its choice to save a human, was no longer alone. Allies, friends, and learners gathered, inspired by the example of one life carried across fire and shadow. Not all were peaceful. Fleets from the old empires still searched, still hoped to destroy the human and reclaim their lost pride. But when they arrived, they hesitated. They had expected a helpless human and a single dragon. Instead, they saw a thriving world, a community of life, and the child, now grown, standing fearless beside the dragon, speaking to the leaders of fleets with calm authority. "We survive," the human said. "We build. We protect. Life continues, and it can be stronger than fear. If you wish to join us, do so with honor. If not, leave and remember that destruction cannot win when life refuses to die." Some of the empires retreated, frightened by the quiet courage of a human who had survived against all odds. Others stayed and learned, helping to rebuild what had been lost. Slowly, the galaxy began to shift. Old hatred faded. Old battles were remembered but no longer repeated. Life, guided by compassion and courage, began to grow where fire had once reigned. The dragon watched the human as they moved among the new settlers, teaching, helping, and leading. Time had passed, and the human had grown tall and wise. The dragon's scales had dulled with age and scars lined its wings, but the spirit remained as strong as ever. They had endured together, and their bond had changed not just their own lives, but the lives of countless others. One evening, under a sky full of stars, the human looked up at the dragon. "Do you think they will remember us?" they asked softly. The dragon's eyes glowed, reflecting starlight. "They will," it said. "Not because of fear, not because of war, but because of hope. They will remember that even when galaxies burned, life continued. That even when empires fell, courage and care survived. That one dragon's wings could protect more than a single life, they could protect the future itself." The human smiled and leaned against the dragon's warm scales. "Then our journey is not over," they said. "It has only begun." The dragon rumbled softly in agreement. Together they looked out over the green valleys, the bright waters, and the creatures that now called this planet home. From the fire of destruction, life had risen again. From the ashes of fallen empires, hope had grown. And in the heart of the galaxy, a dragon and a human stood side by side, showing that survival, courage, and compassion could change the universe. Years passed, and the child, now fully grown, taught new humans, dragons, and other beings to live together in peace and strength. The dragon, still protective but no longer alone, flew above, guarding and guiding, watching the lessons spread. Stories of their survival traveled across galaxies, whispered in spaceports, written in records, and told to children. They became legends not of war but of endurance, love, and hope. The galaxy, once broken and burning, began to heal. Old fears faded, old empires crumbled, and new civilizations grew from the soil, water, and courage left behind. And always, through it all, the dragon remained beside the human, wings spread wide, carrying the reminder that life, no matter how small, could survive even the darkest fires. And so, in a galaxy that had seen empires fall and stars burn, one dragon and one human had done the impossible. They had protected life. They had inspired hope. They had taught the galaxy that even in the shadow of destruction, something far stronger than fire could rise. Something far stronger than empires could endure. And that was the power of courage, compassion, and a single life protected by golden wings.